DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Do you want to know what's happening in the Finger Lakes? We do too. We're going in depth with decision makers in the heart of upstate New York to get the answers you need. From the team of FingerLakes1.com, this is Inside the FLX.
All right, welcome back to Inside the FLX. It is time for our monthly chat with Cayuga County Sheriff Brian Schenck. Sheriff, thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate the time as always.
Thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and talk about what's going on with our sheriff's office.
Yeah, so first things first, let's talk about this incident earlier this month involving a person who took his own life. He was at the center of a child exploitation investigation of some sort. What can you tell us about that now that a few weeks have passed and I'm sure the wheels are still very much turning on that one?
They are. Sure. So on August 8th, we were involved with a joint investigation here at the sheriff's office, along with our area partners, the Auburn Police Department, the New York State Police, and the FBI as well, their Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force. We had a multi-agency investigation into individuals in our Central New York region that unfortunately are willing to prey upon children and sexually exploit them. We were working on this investigation for a period of time and had identified some individuals that were willing to engage in sexual conduct with whom they believed was a 14-year-old child for money. We had identified them and brought them to a location in the city of Auburn where we had made 3 arrests on August 8th, 3 individual arrests. The individuals were not connected in any way, but all had come with that intent that I had mentioned. And in the 4th situation, 4th individual had come to the location, an individual by the name of Scott DeMonte, 51-year-old individual from Fayetteville. When he arrived, officers with the Auburn Police Department did attempt to take him into custody and arrest him. And at that point, he quickly displayed a handgun, did point it in the direction of one of the Auburn police officers, and subsequently turned the gun on himself and shot himself in the head, and did die as a result of his injuries. But it happened very quickly. It was a very dynamic situation. We're continuing to investigate that aspect of it. The Auburn Police Chief, Jim Slayton, asked if our agency would conduct an external investigation into the actual arrest and the shooting, and that's what we're continuing to investigate. But we've nearly completed our investigation. We have lots of body cam footage, other video, digital evidence that we're looking at, but it's very evident from the evidence that we have in the video footage that Mr. DeMonte did take his own life, that he did menace one of the officers that did fire a shot, did not hit him. The shot did not hit anybody else, but the officers did a great job in a very, very quickly an incident that was quickly unfolding. They showed great restraint and, just firing one round before he did shoot himself. So it was a very difficult situation, but what's very disturbing to me about this situation is just the number of people that are willing to sexually exploit children in our community. And we're going to continue to work with our law enforcement partners to identify these individuals and bring them to justice.
Yeah, a couple of follow-ups there, if I could. The first is you called it a dynamic situation, and we hear that a lot when it comes to situations like this. Paint a picture for us, if you could, about the amount of time that the officers actually have to react in that type of situation, because we're literally talking about seconds, right? We aren't talking about minutes upon minutes or even 10 or 15 seconds. We're talking sometimes 3, 4, or 5 seconds and having to make a decision, right?
It was literally seconds, as you said. The Auburn police officers engaged him, told him that he was under arrest as they were identifying themselves, And he quickly pulled out that gun and just as a matter, literally a second, pointed it in the direction of an officer before turning it on himself. And very, very fast moving situation where the officers had to make a split-second decision. One of them did make the decision to fire a round, and that was the officer who was, the gun was aimed at, Mr. DeMonte's gun. But literally, as you said, seconds. And, our police officers, sheriff's deputies, and people in law enforcement are often faced with situations where they don't have time to sit and, make an informed decision in a matter of minutes. It's a matter of seconds that they have to make that split-second decision. And this was one of those cases. Unfortunately, nobody else was hurt in this situation.
Is that training, instinct, or some combination of both? Because when you're talking about, for a person who is not in law enforcement, listening to this, we talk about training almost every time every time we get together and talk. It's usually talking about different types of training that you guys are doing. But to the non-law enforcement person, they're going to hear this and say, how in God's name is there enough training hours in the year to prepare you for that moment to be able to make a decision in a span of, to not only make a decision, but have processed an entire situation, a scene in a matter of 3 to 5 seconds to make the right decision that, doesn't end up costing you your life?
Well, training is extremely important in law enforcement, and it's a perishable skill. I mean, we have to continually train, reality-based training. We do scenario-based training where we present situations to our deputies. And I know all of our local law enforcement agencies do similar type training, but, just prepare them to make these split-second decisions. But I wish we could train more. You can never train enough, but we train as much as we can, certainly as much as time allows, as much as our resources allow, our budgetary resources allow. But it is, as I said, a perishable skill. So we have to continually be training surrounding these particular scenarios and brushing up on our skills. And learning from other incidents. When these incidents happen, or we see other incidents that maybe other law enforcement agencies are handling across the country, we sometimes, analyze those, try to learn from them, try to, hone in our skills based on those particular scenarios. But it is a very important thing to continually train and be as prepared as possible to deal with these incidents.
And a question about sort of the process of how these multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency investigations play out. I would assume that there is a lot of background work that goes into these things before any agency gets to a point of conducting a sting or making an arrest. One of the main questions that came following this original story was, in a normal situation, and I'm sure there isn't a normal situation, are we talking about weeks, months before you're able to get to that point of making an arrest, or do these situations tend to unfold a little more quickly than people might imagine?
It really depends on the particular operation, the particular investigation. They're all different. Some cases do take quite some time to put together before you have enough evidence to actually make an arrest, and there are other times where you learn of a particular situation and you can put it together in a matter of a few hours. But with these types of investigations, child exploitation, especially child sexual exploitation, we're trying to do as much as we can to identify these individuals and get them off the street. And unfortunately, they're here in our community. And with that particular case, we did make 3 other arrests. Those cases are pending. We had an individual from Seneca Falls, an individual from the town of Troop right here in our own community, and an individual from the city of Syracuse. And even more disturbing for me, the individual from our community here in the town of Troop did not enter our country legally. So he's here illegally, unfortunately, and also trying to prey on, who he believed was a 14-year-old child. So that's concerning as well. But those cases are all pending. And hopefully, we can keep them off the street so they're not preying on our children.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about training. Last week, or I guess maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, you guys had some crisis intervention officer training at the sheriff's office. Talk to us a little bit about that.
We did. we've hosted this class before. Our sheriff's office, in partnership with Cayuga County Mental Health, hosted a 40-hour crisis intervention officer training, and we did have a number of law enforcement personnel and dispatchers from numerous counties, surrounding counties. So people there from Seneca Falls, from the town of Geddes, the town of DeWitt, Cayuga County 911, Auburn Police, our sheriff's office, and some other law enforcement agencies. This is a great course that gives our officers some additional skills on how to deal with people that are in a mental health crisis. It teaches them how to de-escalate the situation, teaches them how to go at these particular incidents with a focus on the mental health issue that might be causing whatever behavior, brings us into contact with that individual. And it also helps stress the number of resources that are available in our community, and how partnering with our local mental health experts, our local mental health staff and other providers in our community can really help resolve these crisis situations. And, one primary goal for me when we host these trainings is to make sure we give our members all the tools that we can to help them address these difficult situations, but, to try to make sure that we're steering a mental health crisis to a mental health response. I don't want to see folks that are suffering from a mental health issue that could be helped, with mental health resources wind up in our jail or in a jail anywhere out there in Central New York. We want to make sure we're doing all we can to train our folks to deal with those appropriately. And again, we go back to training. This is another area where, it takes a lot of training. We're police officers. We enforce the law. We're not experts in the mental health field, but this gives our members a few more tools in their toolbox to address these difficult situations.
Definitely. Last Friday, you guys graduated a couple deputies and a few road patrol deputies from the police academy in Syracuse. That has to be good news for your team. That means closer to full strength, feeling good about where your staff is. Talk to us a little bit about that ceremony.
Sure. So we graduated some folks. We always enjoy the graduations, and we are increasing our numbers and getting to a place where we're a little more comfortable with the amount of staff we have. But it was a really moving ceremony for me. Back in April, I'm sure your listeners will recall, in Onondaga County, Lieutenant Michael Husak and Officer Michael Jensen with the Syracuse Police Department both lost their life responding to an incident. Lieutenant Husak's wife and children were at the graduation, and they were greeting each of the graduates when they came up to get their certificates. Lieutenant Husak's children were giving gift bags and cards to each of the graduates, and I just thought it was a really moving way for his children and for his family, to show support to us when it's so important that we show support to them for the sacrifice that their father, that the husband made. It was just a really moving ceremony. I was so glad that they were there to be part of that. And, it really made me think that we owe our families that support our law enforcement members such a debt of gratitude as well. And sometimes we don't think about that, but they sacrifice a lot with the work that our law enforcement people do. And it was just really great and moving to have them there. I was glad that they could be there and be a part of that. Absolutely.
School resource officer training took place last week. That's got to be, we're in crunch time now, right? Like back to school is about a week and maybe a day or two away. What are you thinking heading into back to school season? Are you thinking buses? Are you thinking SRO program? Like what's the biggest thing on your mind right now?
Well, really all of the above. We try to address the traffic safety issues with the buses. We certainly try to do all we can to keep our schools safe and our children safe, both in and out of school. But the two-day training that we recently had is an annual training this is our second year. We did provide training to to SROs from 9 districts in our local community, as well as Cayuga, Onondaga, BOCES. But we had Jacqueline Schildkraut there, who is a national expert on mass shootings and school safety. And she discussed not only school shooting scenarios, but we talked a lot about prevention, how we can prevent them, what we can do with behavioral threat assessment to identify individuals that are going down that pathway of violence and stop that before that happens. But provided a lot of classroom training the first day, and the second day was all scenario-based training. So it was great to bring all of those student resource officers together to provide that training. And we learn a lot from each other, not only, with the presentations that we give, but from each of us sharing different experiences and bringing their knowledge to that training. So it's really good. It's a great collaboration we have. And Under Sheriff Peenstra leads that effort with our school resource officer training program.
Yeah, and it has to be kind of a tough balance because you're having to do the normal police work of day-to-day operations, but then also having to plan for what I would assume is a constantly evolving approach when it comes to keeping schools safe and keeping kids safe in schools and faculty and staff. How much of a challenge is that year to year and having to evaluate all of the various threats and things that are going on in the world and keeping kids safe, since keeping kids safe is obviously such an important thing?
It is challenging, but what I can say, I've really noticed a shift in our community in recent years, and especially, over the past decade. There's a lot more collaboration between not only our schools and law enforcement, but all of the other providers in our community when it comes to like mental health resources and, social services and things like that. We really are attacking problems in our community and within our school districts and, working on school safety issues in a multidisciplinary way. Didn't used to be the case. So the challenges are broad. Things are changing constantly, as you mentioned. But I think we do a much better job today working in a multidisciplinary way to address these challenges. So I'm encouraged by that. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to continue to, improve upon the services we provide and improve upon our partnerships. But I think we've come a long ways, and I've seen that over the course of my career.
Yeah. And let's finally, to put a bow on this conversation, talk about something I think we've talked about now 3 months in a row. DWI arrests, they are up. You are concerned. You vocalized that concern numerous times now. What can you tell us about this situation as we approach Labor Day weekend, when typically that is a high visibility weekend when law enforcement is out trying to prevent folks from driving intoxicated for that 3-day stretch? What can you tell us about what you're seeing over there?
Sure. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I want to keep bringing this issue up because it is a concern for our agency. We had about 8 DWI arrests just last month alone. That's double what we normally have, but I think we're up over 30 this month. But when you think about our community with the city of Auburn and the state police out there as well, the number that they have, the numbers we're seeing with our agency are very alarming, and I'm guessing that's probably that way in every jurisdiction that's within your listening area here locally. But it's very concerning because there are a lot of people that are making that decision to drink and drive, and many that are on our roads in an intoxicated condition. And we've had a number of accidents recently involving drivers that are under the influence. And knock on wood, we haven't been dealing with serious injuries, but it's just a matter of time before that one's going to come. But, I just keep bringing this issue up to remind anybody listening that, line up that ride and make that decision to not drink and drive, because, you could throw your life away or, ruin somebody else's, hurt or kill somebody. I just think we got to keep talking about this issue and reminding folks to not drink and drive.
What do you chalk it up to? Because obviously rideshare services have become more and more prevalent every day, even in more rural communities. Is it lack of consequences? Is it prevalence of drinking, or just sort of a reverting back to, pre-pandemic something or another where people's mindset is different? Like what is going on there? Like, what do you think?
I think it's a little bit of all the above. I will tell you the prevalence of drinking. When you mentioned that, I'm very active with the board here with Nick's Ride for Friends here in Auburn. It's a peer support organization that offers peer support for those that are struggling with addiction and substance use disorders. And I know that we have been looking at our stats there, and we're serving more and more clients that are dealing with addiction to alcohol. More and more people in our community appear to be suffering from that and drinking, unfortunately. I think that's probably part of it. The lack of consequences could be part of that. It probably has some some impact as well. But it's kind of all of the above. But it's something that we have to continue to aggressively address as a community. Because not only are people suffering that are, that have these addictions and these substance use disorders, but also we've got so many people that are being put at risk on our highways when people are making the decision to drink and drive. So we got to continue to aggressively attack that. And I hope we get to a place where I'm not bringing this issue up during our interviews because, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I think it's important that we do.
Yeah, if you could, just to sort of put a bow on that one, what are the consequences of a first-time DWI offense? So people can sort of understand what the stakes are for their own life, not just the risk they're posing to everyone else in the world when they drive drunk.
Sure, I think in a perfect scenario where you get that DWI where you haven't hurt somebody, you're going to have some significant lawyer fees. You're going to potentially lose your license for a period of time. You're going to have potentially a criminal record. There's a lot of consequences that come with that, but significant fines, significant fees if you have to work with an attorney. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And again, that's if you don't hurt somebody and or kill somebody, which could ruin the rest of your life and potentially somebody else's.
Absolutely. Sheriff, thanks for the time. As always, we will be talking to you at the end of September.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of Inside the FLX. Check the show notes for links to everything we discussed today. And remember, new episodes of the show drop every Monday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the iHeartRadio app. If you have a question or a suggestion for a future episode, email news@fingerlakes1.com and download the fingerlakes1.com app for the latest breaking news. For the entire team here, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.